Wasteland is one of the games that defined the computer RPG when it debuted back in 1988. It ultimately led to the launch of Fallout, so with bigger fish to fry, the mainline franchise was abandoned. 25 years later, creator Brian Fargo and his studio inXile crowdfunded today's subject for Game Pass or fail, Wasteland 2. Microsoft was impressed enough to add it to Game Pass in June 2018 and outright acquire inXile later that year. 5 years is a long time in the RPG genre, so can this isometric role player stand up to some stiff competition on Microsoft's service? Let's find out if Wasteland 2 is a Game Pass or fail.
We need help.
We'll start off by saying that, like a lot of potential Game Pass subscribers, our experience with isometric RPGs is limited. Wasteland 2 immediately throws the player into the deep end, even if you tell the game you have no clue. The tutorial consists of easily missed text pop-ups. It's not off to a good start. The pop-ups keep coming, this time for quests. Before we can make it to the first, we're inundated with several more. There's no sense of which should be prioritized, so we just pick one. But oops, we can't complete the quest because the party can't pick locks. It's an ability choice that seems obvious in hindsight, so why isn't it a default skill? This thing needs more rails. When we think of RPGs, we envision hacking with swords and leveling up our character. But Wasteland 2 emphasizes story. It's the game's clear strength. Even in our limited playtime, the Desert Rangers trying to solve the problems of the Wasteland is compelling. The pace at which the new story beats occur is not. After 6 hours of play, the main plot has yet to lurch forward. The character development is a slow burn. At first, you don't think you care about them, but by the end of the mission you do. Plot development is slow, but effective.
Rangers, where have you been?
The isometric perspective is fairly foreign to us, and now we see why it has struggled to take hold outside of PC. It's incredibly awkward and cumbersome for exploration. We've spent far too much time scanning screens with the cursor searching for interactive objects. It would be nice to be able to skip the process, but you can't. Something crucial like ammo or a door that leads to the next objective could be hidden in the background. The point-and-click movement basically sucks, especially when you have to move precisely to avoid exploding traps. The now classic XCOM-style turn-based combat includes cover, reactive attacks, the works. The low odds of landing attacks can be disheartening though. Enemies miss just as often, so it's not a case of it being too difficult. It just makes each battle drag on. Presumably, this problem is even worse on higher difficulties. The odds for skill checks are annoying in general and encourage obsessive save scumming. The alternative is a random chance of failure and even more wasted time. We know you have a lot of options on Game Pass, so we need to compare Wasteland 2 with its competitors on the service. If you want to play an RPG, or even just something post-apocalyptic, there are a lot of choices. The most obvious comps are the other two Wasteland games, and while the remaster of the original hasn't done well critically, Wasteland 3 is widely considered one of the benchmarks of the genre. Pillars of Eternity 2 is another viable alternative. We've played it, and it's excellent, but it features a more even mix of combat and prose. If you're just looking for a game focused on XCOM-style turn-based combat, Game Pass provides some good alternatives for this as well. Gears Tactics is the rare big-budget game in the genre. It's been available for PC for some time, and we're big fans. Then, there's an indie take on it called Phoenix Point. It's not amazing, but it does stay close to the formula. If you simply want to play through the end of the world, State of Decay 2 does it quite well, and a lot of its initial technical issues have been rectified. There's also the notorious Fallout 76. It's improved since launch, and now includes viable single-player options. Now it's time to find out, does Wasteland 2 get a Game Pass or Game Fail? It makes a terrible first impression. It lacks adequate guidance, and since the genre is foreign to most players and the story has a glacial pace, we suspect most will quit after just a couple of hours. The thing is, if you persevere and get over the hump, it continually improves. But should you? The thing about Game Pass is it's a haven for players with a short attention span. If you don't like the first 5 minutes of something, then you move on to something else. It's typically not favorable to a game like Wasteland 2, and we'd be lying if we said we would have continued playing if we didn't have to. With better RPGs and turn-based combat options available, it's ultimately far too big a time commitment for the platform considering the alternatives. Wasteland 2 gets a Game Fail. Join us next week as we take a look at Rise of Nations.